Hey, what's going on everybody? Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. Hopping right on into today's content. Today we're going to be ranking almost all of the available guitar shapes for us to play. These tier ranking videos are a lot of fun because it's just a quick little way for me to just kind of riff on a particular topic, give some insight, some commentary and opinions on, what we have to rank. And today we're going to be talking about the possible shapes and just overall aesthetics of a guitar. So the criteria for these rankings is more or less just combination of an aesthetic and or like the ergonomic playability of a guitar. So I'm going to be doing my very best to explain when I rank a particular shape why I'm going to be putting it in a particular slot and explain like I like the way it looks, I like the way it feels, a combination of the two, etc, okay? Don't get too caught up in semantics. Like I said, this is all in good fun and just a way for me to just talk about a particular type of shape and vibe of a guitar and just kind of just speak on it in more or less 15 seconds, okay? So, orientating you to my tier ranking list, we have S, A, B, C, and F. Obviously, if you're familiar with the tier ranking, you know S is the top tier, and then F is down below. Now, F for me personally doesn't necessarily mean that like it's a literal fail, just at the bottom of the barrel. And, we can't all love everything the same. That's incredibly contrived. If I was to kind of like fake it and just make everything great, I'm allowed to have an opinion, you know what I mean? So let's start diving on in. Two things, I just ask that you subscribe if you haven't, and if you want to leave your favorite guitar shapes down below in the comments, by all means, you're more than willing to do so and able to do so, and I love to hear your guys' opinions down below as well. So with that being said, let's start talking, man. So let's just start with a pretty common one here. Let's go with a Tele Shape. I'm gonna go Tele Shape. I'm gonna put that in C category, just because I don't know, man, I really never have really vibed with any sort of Tele guitar that I've ever played, and I really just honestly don't think they look that good. I think they kind of look kind of wonky and kind of, I don't know, kind of plain, kind of bland. They're very boxy, almost like, very slab body-esque, and not really a huge fan of them. I mean, John 5 is known for playing a Tele as well as Jim, but yeah, apart from that, man, just not really into the Tele vibes at all. Plus, I really don't think they sound that good. Let's go with a Warlock. Now, I'm going to put Warlocks up in B tier, just because my very first guitar was a literal BC Rich Warlock. Now, the Warlock's a pretty specific shape. There's not too many guitars out there that look like Warlocks, so I'm aware of that. But it's, unique enough in the sense that, like, I have to include it in this list. And like I said, man, the Warlock was literally my first guitar ever. It was a BC Rich Kerry King Tribal starter pack, and then as I got a little bit older, I painted it red, white, and black with some EVH stripes, and I still have it to this day. Here it is right here. Look how rad this thing is. This thing's always kind of just like in the background of my videos every now and again. I recently needed a tuner, so that's why the string's kind of hanging a little bit, off. I needed a hip shot tuner. But yeah, man, this thing is very sentimental and it'll be here forever. So that's why the Warlock is in B tier. It's very metal-esque and very weaponry-esque, but it has a huge soft spot in my heart. Moving right along, let's go with the Majesty. Unfortunately, I'm going to put it in F category, just because it is just too futuristic and just too far removed from what I like about guitars. I'm a traditionalist at heart. I've said it 1,000,001 times, but in case you're new to this channel or just haven't seen me yet, what's up? Nice to meet you. But in all seriousness, man, the Majesty is just too futuristic. It's ergonomic as hell, man. It plays great. I was an owner of a Majesty about 5 years ago now. I had a real one, an Ernie Ball Music Man Majesty. It's one of the best guitars that I've ever played physically, but I just couldn't gel with how it looked. It's just too futuristic. It looks like something from the Jetsons. They look great, they play great, they sound amazing, and all credit to anybody who loves them, but for me personally, I'm just not a huge fan of them at all. I just really can't see myself ever wanting to play a Majesty ever again. Let's go with the E shape here, the old Explorer shape. I'm going to put it in C tier as well. I have a Solar E-Type right back there, and I love that guitar. It's a baritone guitar. But the Explorer themselves, I'm not really a fan of how they play. It's more or less just like it looks cool rather than like practicality, in my opinion. I'm not really a huge fan of how the horn kind of sits up here. It kind of forces your arm to push forward and a little to the left if you're a right-handed guitar player. To caveat off of that, with that contour, with that Explorer shape, I'm not a huge fan of it as well, because I like having a piece of the guitar kind of in contact with my torso. I think you can kind of like manipulate the guitar and kind of almost push the guitar into your body and kind of anchor yourself with that. With the Explorer shape, having that completely removed, I feel like as though it's kind of just missing, that element of a guitar that I like. So it's not really comfortable, but that being said, they're iconic and they look awesome. I mean, James Hetfield with an Explorer looks super rad. Same with like Dave Grohl and people like that, Lizzie Hale. Anybody who plays an Explorer type, they look awesome, man, and the guitars themselves look awesome. but for me, it's just more or less it looks cool and it doesn't really feel all that comfortable. Here's a guitar I've never really talked about ever in my life, a Strandberg. I'm gonna put that in F category. These are like the first headless guitars, and I don't even really know if they're meant to be like aesthetically pleasing. The only time I've ever really seen anybody remotely pull this off is Eddie Van Halen in Live Without a Net playing Summer Nights, but even then they look kind of silly, man. I mean, the guitar is like no bigger than like a cereal box. They're pretty interesting looking. They're futuristic as all get out, but and I don't know too many people that are like Steinbergers that are the sickest guitars known to man. And I think they kind of like play into that. At least that's my opinion. So yeah, man, I'm gonna put it in F category. They're cool. I mean, they're novelty pieces, but in terms of like would I ever like sit down and like own a Steinberger? I don't think so. Let's go with the Firebird. I'm gonna put the Firebird shape in B tier. Now, obviously Gibson is making this shape most famous, but ESP as well as Ibanez also has a variation of this shape. Talking about the Meshuggah signature, as well as like there's an LTD out there that looks really, really cool. I think these are cool, man. I think these are a little bit easier to play compared to an Explorer. I mean, they're kind of in the same ballpark, but they're a little bit more rounded and a little less like, you know, sharp and angular. I kind of like rounded edges on a guitar. I just think it's more aesthetically pleasing to me personally, but the contours and the carves aren't as drastic as, say, compared to an Explorer. So it's kind of bridging that gap, kind of getting almost into Les Paul territory a little bit. So yeah, I think they look cool, and I just think they're more ergonomically pleasing and aesthetically pleasing as well. Moving right along, let's go with the Super Shredder V style. I'm gonna put these up in A. Now this goes with like anything from Dean, Jackson, Solar, you know, the metal Vs, you know what I mean? Like where they're undoubtedly metal guitars. We'll get to another V down below as well. But I think these guitars are awesome, man. I wish I could pull off a King V. Maybe I could down the road. I could get another King V, but I just think they look so cool, man. Kind of contradicting almost anything I've ever said about I like rounded edges and stuff like that. The exception is with like a V, for example. I think a V is like so cool and so like just it's an insane shape and it's just an in-your-face shape. So like if you're gonna have that shape, go with it, run with it. And I think they're actually relatively easy to play too. They're super light, they're comfortable. Yeah, man, anything that's like a super V, a King V, whatever you want to call it, a Dean V, like the Exiles, I think those are cool. Let's get something up in that S category. Let's go with any of the EVH Wolfgang renditions. I personally think the PV Wolfgang is the coolest because that's like when I first really understood what a Wolfgang was when I was a little kid. I saw a PV Wolfgang live in 2004 in Philadelphia. So yeah, man, I love this shape so much. A lot of people don't really like the EVH Wolfgang shape, whether it's the Ernie Ball one, now the Access, or the PV, or the EVH. I've always loved it, man. I think they're so cool. I think they're just like so unique too, and something that you wouldn't expect from EVH, you know, because he was always just like a super strat player from, you know, the infancy of his guitar journey pretty much. Ever since he built his custom Frankenstrat, you know, that's all he played, and then it switched in like the early 90s, like 90, 91, something like that. So it was a huge departure from everything that he kind of created for his own personal brand, and then he kind of was always consistent with that shape until his unfortunate passing. I've always loved this shape. I think it looks cool. It's unique. I've always loved all the different renditions of the headstock. Again, I think the PV headstock is the coolest. Not really a fan of the EVH one where it's carved out. I think it's kind of weird. I've always liked the PV headstock the best, but all that encompassing, man. Top-mounted Floyd, humbuckers, bolt-on. It looks so cool. Yeah, an iconic S-tier guitar shape for me personally. Now, this guitar, I don't even really know why I put this in here. It kind of looks like a Warlock, but this is a War Beast. But I want to put this in F category because it is just, it's too much, you know. Like I think the Warlock is a nice, like, that's the limit of like craziness, but the War Beasts, everything that the Warlock does is just like cranked up to 10 in terms of like extremeness. The headstock looks wild, the horns are wild. I don't know, it's just too much for me. And you know, you might be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I know I could be contradicting myself because why is a Warlock in B tier and the War Beast is in F tier? I don't know, man. I just think they're a little too extreme and a little too, I don't want to say goofy looking, but just too much, you know, like dial back a little bit. That's just my own personal opinion. All right, up next, let's go Dean ML, an iconic classic shape. I'm gonna go, I'll put it in C tier. It's very much just like an Explorer. I mean, if you look at them next to each other side by side, it's literally the equivalent of an Explorer, just we got even more of a drastic kind of cutaway. It's almost an F tier for me just because, I don't know, MLs are so like big and like bulky and like in the rare instance that I had one in my possession, I was always dinging them up and like bashing them into things because they're just so long, and like the guitar itself like ends here, but then it just continues to go on like with the headstock. And just like all the extra horns and stuff like that. Now, I know what you guys are going to ask, well, what about the Solar Type X? Because those are kind of essentially Dean MLs, and you're right, you know, so that remains to be seen. But I will say I like the Type X guitars a little bit more because the bottom horn isn't as big as the ML horn. So that's kind of like where I view the Solar Type X a little bit better, but that remains to be seen. You know, and my opinions can always change and, you know, be altered and refined. So that goes without saying. So anyway, man, yeah, the Dean ML or any sort of ML shape, they're cool. They're incredibly iconic, but I don't know, just middle of the road, a little below average actually for me. Okay, SG body types, F tier. F all the way. Honestly, if I had to pick my least favorite guitar shape, it definitely would be an SG type. All of the SG type guitars that I've ever tried have incredibly thin bodies, really lightweight bodies, and then just giant, huge, heavy necks. And they're always just neck heavy. They just always neck dive. All of them, literally. ESP, Gibson, doesn't matter. They just always, they just neck dive. I'm incredibly bummed because I think SGs look really, really cool. I mean, Angus Young and Tony Iommi, need I say more, right? But when it comes to actually playing them, they just make no sense. Not only that, when you have them in your hand, your right hand always pushes further. The bridge is always kind of pushed forward, more to like your fretting hand to the left. So I always felt like I was playing like this in a way. Obviously not. This is a drastic example, but you know what I mean? Like it's always just too much for me. So all that being said, I just wish the SG, like, I don't know, I just wish that somebody made like a thick pancake bodied of an SG, like with the weight of a Les Paul. Then we could talk, man. But they're always just like super thin and super lightweight, and they just neck dive like nobody's business. So probably my least favorite guitar shape, and yeah, down below an F tier. Let's counter the negativity here. Let's go with a Strat, just a plain old Strat, S tier. That's Fender Stratocasters, Kiesel Deloses, Ibanez AZs, Paul Reed Smith Silver Skies, and any variation of a Strat through and through. I love them, man. S tier. My favorite guitar shape of all time, probably. The first guitar I ever became infatuated with was a Fender Stratocaster, and then shortly followed by another guitar shape that we'll soon talk about. But yeah, man, just a plain old Strat. I love them, man. All renditions of a Strat. Now, we're going to be talking about a different variation of a Strat, quote unquote, here very soon, but just a plain old Stratocaster, they're awesome. In my opinion, I think a Stratocaster, like an HSS Stratocaster, for example, can do almost anything and everything. I think they're like the utility knife of guitar bodies and shapes and types, whatever you want to call it. So for that, they're iconic. I'm going to put it in S tier. Let's go with a plain old V style, like a rounded off V. I'm going to put it in B category. I think these look cool, but I don't know, man. I think if you're going to like make a V shape, might as well go for it, right? That's why I put like the King V, the angular V shape, the angular V type, whatever you want to call it, up a little bit higher. I just think these are almost as cool, just not quite as cool. And more often than not, these types of guitars don't have as much metal appointments or modern appointments. Like you'll never really see like a flying V with a Floyd Rose or anything like that, or active pickups, you know, generally speaking. Anytime you see something like that with modern specs or just more cooler specs, it's usually on this type of V. So that's where I'm kind of differentiating the two. I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm not like losing you guys on that assumption there, or that rationalization. But yeah, those are the difference that I see, and that's why I kind of separated the two. All right, let's talk about Super Strats. I'm gonna put them in A tier. Now this is anything from like Solar S types, Charvels, Dinkies or Pro Mods, Jackson Soloists, anything that has like a Floyd on it with some high output pickups that is like heavily inspired by a Fender Stratocaster, that's a Super Strat. And I think we know that, right? But just to be clear, I love these guitars, and had you asked me this question about maybe like a year or two ago, I'd put these guitars probably like in B or C territory. But now that I've finally kind of learned to understand how a Floyd Rose system truly works and how to maintain it and how to truly like just like put a lot of TLC and just upkeep with those things, I don't hate them as much. I used to not be able to stand them because I was just naive to the fact of, you have to really work with those types of, you know, floating bridges and stuff like that. Now that I've got it figured out, they're awesome, man. They're a lot of fun. So definitely want to put a Super Strat Shape in A tier. All right, let's go Jazzmaster, man. I'm going to put a Jazzmaster. Honestly, I'm going to put it in C tier. I really don't like Jazzmasters that much, except for my baritone Jazzmaster, my Squier baritone Jazzmaster that's just out of frame back there. That 30-inch monster of a guitar. Apart from those, man, I really don't like Jazzmasters at all. So they're almost an F category, F tier. I think they look wonky. I'm not really a huge fan of offset bodies all that much. They kind of look like a blob, like an amoeba of sorts, and that's beautiful, like in its own right. They have their own charm, but for me, I'm not really a fan. I kind of more or less like symmetry and just not super wonky, kind of out there, obscure body shapes. So apart from my vintage modified baritone Jazzmaster from Squier, not really a huge fan of Jazzmasters. Let's go with a Strandberg. Now, Strandbergs are interesting because on one instance, I don't like them at all, but on the other hand, they're incredibly innovative and I love how unique they are. So completely polar opposite ideas of what I think of a Strandberg. So I'll put it in B category. I think they sound great, they play amazing, the necks are so cool. Just not really sure how I feel about the literal shape of the body and not having a headstock. I think a headstock is like paramount. You know, you ask Satchel from Steel Panther his thoughts on having a headstock. If anybody knows that old school video, you guys know what I'm talking about. But in all seriousness, man, like, they play great, they sound great, they look actually kind of cool. They're a little too futuristic for me, but I gotta give credit where credit's due. The fan fret, match that with a really ergonomic neck, stainless steel frets more often than not, like I think maybe always stainless steel frets if I'm not mistaken. It's really puzzling for me. I love them as much as I don't love them. But that being said, I'm not one for a super modern guitar with no headstock and fan frets. That's just a little too futuristic for me. But gotta give credit where credit's due. I kind of like them in a way. Let's go with an offset V, aka a Rhodes type. I'm gonna put that in B category. I like this guitar, this shape, just as much as like a regular old V. And obviously, if you look at the comparison here, I think the Super Vs or whatever, modded Vs, hot rodded Vs are just way cooler. But that being said, I know a lot of players love Rhodes Vs. I mean, obviously, Randy Rhodes did. Ollie from All That Remains, rest in peace. Alexi Laiho, rest in peace. You know, they made those shapes, you know, absolutely iconic and even more, you know, established compared to, say, Randy Rhodes. So for that, I respect this shape so much. But that being said, just not really a huge fan of it. Wrapping it up here, let's go with the Meteora. I'm going to put it right next to a Jazzmaster. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have separated a Jazzmaster with a Meteora. Essentially, a Meteora is a Jazzmaster, but just with a little bit more contours and a little bit more angular, you know, appointments and rounded off edges or lack thereof. So maybe I shouldn't have separated the two, but I think they're a little bit different because Meteoras have humbuckers and don't have all the crazy switches and stuff like that. But this video is more or less a shape video, not specs. So staying on topic, Meteora, I don't know, I wanted to really like them. I tried my very best to like them. And I've always thought about getting that Player Plus, the Silver Burst one. Just hasn't happened, and I think that ship has set sail. Just not really for me, so I'm going to put it in C category, C tier. Up next, the Kaizen. One of the newest shapes out there right now in the market from Ernie Ball and Tosin Abasi, F tier. Not a fan of this guitar at all. Kind of like what I said with the Majesty, just too wild, man. Too futuristic. Just too gnarly of a shape, man. Like way out there. It looks like it's from like the year, I don't know, 2500 or something like that. It looks really, really crazy. They look cool, but, you know, just not really for me. And last but not least, come on now. You know where I was going to put that one. Single cuts belong in S tier. I have made a literal career out of playing single cuts, more or less. Like, anytime I make a YouTube video or write a song or whatever, man, like, it's on a single cut more often than not. I've praised single cuts, whether it's from Gibson or Solar or ESP or whomever, man. Like, anytime there's a single cut out there, I'm a fan. I'm on board, and I'm at least intrigued and interested. So, it doesn't necessarily have to be from Gibson, but more or less, you know, I love Gibson Les Pauls, can't help it. But anytime there's a single cut out there, especially with modern and or metal appointments, like, dude, I'm sold. Take my money type of deal. So, that being said, single cuts, my second favorite shape behind a plain old Strat or, you know, Strat copy, Strat variation. But yeah, man, single cuts, you knew that was going to be an S tier from me. So everybody, that's going to do it for this video. What do you guys think of my thoughts and opinions? Like I said, man, this video is all in good fun, and don't, think too hard about like semantics and shapes and stuff like that. This is just a way for me to just talk about guitars for the day and just hang out with you guys and just explain my thoughts and opinions on certain shapes and models and appointments and all the above, right? So with that being said, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Again, if you're brand new to my channel, be sure to subscribe, leave your thoughts and opinions down below in the comments section. And with that being said, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay metal. I'll see you guys next time. Later.